这个探测器主要是针对木星三颗冰冷的卫星，也就是木卫2、4和木卫3，是依序要进行探测。这也是欧洲太空总署 ESA 年度最重要的太空任务。这一次的发射是在南美洲的这个圭亚那，也就是盖亚那，由亚利安5号火箭搭载的 JUICE 定于2023年4月从位于法属圭亚那的库鲁欧洲太空发射场要准备进行发射升空。您现在看到的是准备发射前的一些画面啊。预计需要8年左右的时间，这个探测器才能到达太阳系最大的行星木星系统。现在是相关的一些介绍。
Journey into space. Following yesterday's postponement due to bad weather, Ariane 5 is now ready for launch here at Europe's spaceport in French Guiana. With her single passenger, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, JUICE.
这枚卫星上面是只有载有着单一的一个探测器，叫 JUICE， 简称叫 JUICE。它主要的目的是要这个探测木星的3颗卫星，其中的木卫3是相当大，可以说是太阳系中最大的一颗这个卫星哦。那大家可以看到，就是说昨天本来应该要发射，但是因为天气的状况，特别是昨天是有这个雷电，所以延后到今天准备发射。现在是发射转播正要开始。我们来听现场的转播。
Weather was not with us. You know, we have to monitor 2 risks, high altitude winds, and it was okay, but risk of lightning yesterday was a real risk with the cloud to monitor, and so we have made the decision not to lift off yesterday.
But of course, as we always say, better be safe than sorry. JUICE can absolutely afford to wait another day under the fairing. Not a problem.
Yes, for sure, because you know that once we will have done our job, after 27 minutes, and once we will have orbited JUICE on an escape orbit, then it will be the start of an 8-year journey. So 1 day is nothing as compared to what we have ahead of us. We will monitor the weather now in the final minutes. The teams have worked all night. All is red up to now, so we are now... All is green up to now. Sorry.
And we can see it on the status quo, and we get some clapping here from the crowd.
It's a part of emotion for such an important mission.
It's going to bring us very good luck.
Yes, absolutely. Great. And so at 9:14 we will lift off.
At 9:14 we'll lift off. Thank you so much, Stefan, and fingers crossed, good luck for today. And we'll see you later. Thank you so much, Stefan. And Stefan is getting a round of applause in here in Jupiter.
Of course, an emotion which is easy to understand, obviously, considering the conditions of yesterday's delay. But everything is fine, safe and sound under the fairing, as we said. So, as the teams working here in Jupiter Control, more than 7,000 kilometers away over the Atlantic at ESA's Mission Control Center in Darmstadt, Germany, we have the teams there who will take over control of the aircraft once it separates from the mothership. And we're going to go straight over and speak to them and hear how things are looking over there in Darmstadt. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Lisa, and hello to all our watchers. Welcome to ESOC, the European.
现在节目正在介绍各个参与这一次这个太空计划的主要参与单位和个人哦。这一次的计划可以说是相当的大。这个 JUICE 探测计划是由欧洲的航天局来主导，总共有23个国家、18个学术单位、83间公司以及2000多人参与总预算高达16亿的欧元。 这个 JUICE 木星探测器会在这个2024年8月预计飞过地球的唯一的一个卫星，也就是月亮。2025年8月它会飞过金星，在2031年才会进入木星的系统。这一枚这个木星冰月探测器总重将近是5100公斤哦，其中燃料就超过一半，约在2900公斤。它预计探测木卫2、木卫4和木卫3 3颗卫星的表面。为什么选这3颗卫星呢？因为这3颗卫星被认为存在适合生命存在的液态水海洋，并已经成为研究水冰世界生命宜居性的一个探讨焦点。其中这个最大的这一颗木卫3又称为盖尼米德，环绕木星公转周期大约是7天，它是太阳系中围绕行星运转最大的卫星。JUICE 在完成木卫2与木卫4飞月探测以后，将进入木卫3的轨道，成为第一个绕地球以外行星卫星，也就是月球运行的一个这个人类的探测器。好的，我们来听现场的一个对谈。
And slowly in the day, around 7:14 p.m., it has been turned on to start the countdown procedure. They are very close to us, a few kilometers away in LBC control room, and everyone is hoping for good weather specs.
Fantastic. So we have a bit of time to chat about this. So your job is schedule controller. Does that mean that you're in charge of making sure all goes to plan?
It's part of my responsibility, but you know, when it comes to scheduling, it's never one single person's job. It's actually a team exercise because planning means working coherently as a team. And us, the JUICE project team, we are quite schedule-oriented. We have a strong planning mindset. And even if you have the most perfect plan, you always have risk, you have uncertainty. And we saw that yesterday. So imagine if you take a step back, us in JUICE, we had run our AAT campaign through a pandemic. And if you think of the industrial consortium, more than 2,000 people worked on this program, 23 countries, 18 institutions, 83 companies, then you understand the complexity of project management that my colleagues and I have been performed on this mission.
And done a fantastic job so far. So this is a personal journey for you.
现场的音效有一点这个断断续续哦，刚才这个我也特别说明，而且您也听到现场节目有介绍，这一次的计划是欧洲太空界其实跟美国跟世界其他地区的太空界也有交换意见。它这项计划是主要是欧洲航天局来主导，这个牵涉了23个国家。18个学术单位、83间公司、2000多人共同参与哦，这个总预算高达这个16亿，将近17亿的欧元哦。那我们也知道，去年应该说是这个前年最主要的这个一项这个发射就是这个所谓的韦伯太空望远镜啊，那也是由这个亚利安5号火箭在这个圭亚那的太空发射场来发射。那今天这项发射对于未来的科学研究可以说是至关重要。比较特别的是，这一项计划也会配搭这个 NASA 另外一项木星探测计划同时进行，所以对于木星的卫星，主要是木卫2、3、4就会有比较深入的一个研究。我们来看介绍。
In the solar system is a place that holds many secrets. This fascinating gas giant planet and its intriguing moons have raised more questions than answers. Today, these answers are in ESA's grasp, with the very first European mission to Jupiter, JUICE. Short for Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, this spacecraft will explore Jupiter and 3 of its icy moons, Callisto, Europa, and in particular Ganymede. Developed and built by Airbus, JUICE's spacecraft is equipped with 10 top-of-the-line science instruments to explore the Jovian system, and investigate whether some of its many environments may be suitable for the formation of life. This grand odyssey of exploration begins with the launch of JUICE on an Ariane 5 rocket from Europe's spaceport in Kourou, an historical mission aiming at solving key mysteries such as the possibility of life in the Jovian system, Ganymede's magnetic field, and last but not least, the formation of Jupiter and its moons. JUICE will also study Jupiter's complex weather, chemistry, and climate in detail.
It's a very fantastic mission from the scientific point of view. Very broad science, very interdisciplinary science. We would like to see whether around Jupiter there are places where life could have started. To explore that, we need to find a place with internal energy and with liquid water. And inside the icy moons, we have good reason to believe that there is in fact more liquid water there inside the surface than on Earth.
JUICE is expected to arrive at Jupiter in 2031 and will then make its Jupiter tour and moon's flybys before orbiting Ganymede. This will be the first time a spacecraft orbits any moon other than our own. During its journey, JUICE will face many dangers such as Jupiter's intense radiation belts or its large gravitational pull, but these dangers will be worth it for the science that JUICE will uncover. The gas giant will reveal some of its many secrets in 2032 when the first data will be available. Watch this space.
So speaking of space exploration, we have
美洲这个圭亚那发射场的一个画面啊。
With us here today, I'm delighted to welcome once again Thomas Pesquet and Matthias Maurer. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us again today. It's a pleasure. So we're seeing JUICE go up into space with these outstanding instruments. What is it about sending these kind of instruments going out to space yourselves that helps us back here on Earth? First question to you.
Yeah, I think space exploration really.
现场的节目正在介绍相关的科研企划啊。我们来聊一下这一次的这个木星冰月探测器啊。这个探测器我们前面刚刚说，它起飞这个总重是这个5100公斤，其中超过一半是载有油料。这上面一共载有10个科学探测仪器啊，例如是透冰的一个拍摄的一个相机、传感器、光谱仪跟雷达等，并且用高隔热的材料来保护。其中还有这个直径2.5米的一个天线，以及85平方公尺的太阳能电池板。这也是迄今为止太空船使用最大面积的太阳能电池板，所以它这个张开的时间啊，跟部署的时间大概会有这个好几天了，甚至2个礼拜。JUICE将在发射后的28分钟与这个亚利安5号火箭分离，然后5分钟后，欧洲太空总署将使用地面站可以跟踪到 JUICE， 这时候我们就知道这个分离是否成功啊。同时在发射后的99分钟到17天之间呢，也超过2个礼拜，这个 JUICE 的太阳能电池阵列，就是太阳能板、天线、探测器和磁场感应器的延伸杆将会被陆续的这个部署运作。之后 JUICE 准备继续其为期8年的这个木星之旅。我们来看现场相关的介绍。
To the moon, we need to learn more, because on the moon you need geologists. So we need to go out in the field and learn how to talk with the geologist, how to be the hands and the eyes of the geologist once we're on the surface of the moon. And ESA already started this training for European astronauts some years ago. And so we see continuously European astronauts going out into the field, learning all these skills. But we also need to develop facilities where we can train European astronauts what to do on the moon. And so in Cologne, we will now have the moon training facility, which will enable
like to do all this training over there. And it will be so good that even hopefully the NASA astronauts will come over to train there, like for the Artemis mission. So that's the big vision that we have.
But it's not only learning for the moon. We also should also keep in focus that we have European astronauts flying to the ISS. Andy Mogensen is getting ready to fly later this year. And we just started a new astronaut class. They will be flying to the ISS, hopefully, and to whatever comes after the ISS.
So do you imagine yourself taking off from here from the European spaceport here in French Guiana one day, Matthias?
Yes, we are currently in times that are really like a revolution in space. And so Europe needs to step up. And one of the big missions that we have, we need to become sovereign, to become autonomous, also with access to space for Europeans from European soil. And I think French Guiana is the ideal place to send Europeans on a European rocket in a European capsule to space. It's our big dream. Thomas and I, we would love to fly together from here to low Earth orbit, but maybe even also in a European rocket further towards the moon.
And you said you'd be happy to welcome your NASA friends as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like we should not forget spaceflight is also a soft diplomacy power. And we will see very soon that China will invite foreign astronauts to fly to their space station. And so we Europeans, we are just learning that in these times it becomes more and more important to be on level field playing, and spaceflight definitely is also an important part in the diplomacy area.
Huge thank you, Matthias. And we have with us Joseph Aschbacher.
我们听到主持人问他，欧洲这个太空单位为什么参与这一次的这个重要太空计划？他们提到这个太空合作以及这个欧洲发展太空计划的一些重要。当然，主持人非常俏皮的问他说：“这个你欢迎这个美国的太空总署跟你一起参与吗？”同时也提到这个未来的一些太空合作。那受访者非常肯定的提到这个太空合作的重要，特别也提到这个中国，特别是在太空科研方面有长足的进步，所以未来各地各国之间的这个加强合作可以说是至关重要。那他们也提到为什么在这一边就是南美洲的这个盖亚纳的这个太空发展进行发射。我们都知道接近赤道，特别是在这个火箭它的爬升的燃料节省以及它的这个发送上面有一定的好处，所以我们可以看到为什么美国会选在这个比较南边的佛罗里达这个地方来进行这个火箭的发射。我们继续来听这个有关于 JUICE 木星冰月探测的一些介绍。
And only 2 minutes and 17 seconds after liftoff, the two boosters have done their jobs of providing the main thrust, so we don't need them anymore, they are detached from the launcher. Shortly after that, the fairing, which protected the spacecraft from the environment of the launch, is also jettisoned as we have crossed the limits of the atmosphere. Once the launcher reaches an intermediate orbit, the main stage is cut off and separated. So then the upper stage takes over, which engine is going to power for about 16 minutes in order to raise speed and altitude and release juice on the targeted orbit. So by the way, the little towers that you see on the motion picture, they represent a chain of telemetry stations that are receiving data from the Ariane 5 in real time all along the flight path. After some orientation maneuvers, JUICE is separated on a liberations orbit. It means that it will have the required speed to escape literally the gravitational pull of the Earth. Then this is almost the end of the mission from the launcher, as we still need to perform some disposal maneuvers of the upper stage, but JUICE is only beginning its journey. ESA teams will use the North Sea ground telemetry stations in Australia to acquire the signal from the spacecraft and take full control of it. 1 hour and a half after liftoff, Joule will start deploying itself like a butterfly into space. First, it will unfold the large solar panels Their total surface is 85 square meters. This is definitely bigger than my Parisian apartment. And then in the following days, it will deploy its many antennas.
现在正在介绍这个JUICE木星冰月探测器发射以后的一系列的这个重要的时间轴，也就是关键了。什么时候这个引擎关闭？什么时候分离？什么时候这个布放这个主要的太阳能板？你现在看的是发射场现场的画面，距离发射只有9分钟左右。
Which is, of course, the -10 weather update. And
yes.
I'm looking at the board. All is green. I
All is green right
had anything
now.
in my earpiece. I don't see anyone picking up a mic. So it's looking good so far.
It is green and we're good to go. So what we check, like Stefan said, we are usually checking the wind at high altitude, the wind in the vicinity of the launch pad, and also the risk of lightning. Yesterday, it is the risk of lightning that prevented us from launching, but today, everything's good. We're good to go. We can continue the operations.
That sounds great. And continuing the operations means that we're heading towards what we call the synchronized sequence. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So there's another team. You see the teams working here. Final preparation underway here in Jupiter Control. But of course, there's another team at the Launch Control Center, which is much closer to the launch. It's about 3-4 kilometers to the launcher. And they've been working since last night. They've not slept. Tell us more about them.
Well, these teams are monitoring all the operations during the final countdown. So, for example, they are filling the cryogenic stages. They are cooling the Vulcan engine. That's the main engine of the launcher. They are pressurizing the upper stage sphere.
This is them hard at work in the morning.
Exactly. And I think the images were shot this morning, actually. And so it's all these operations that are leading us to the start of the synchronized sequence.
So what is this synchronized sequence, Raphael?
Well, it's a real crucial step.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah. So I'm going to make it very quick. It's basically a succession of operations aimed at giving more and more autonomy to the launcher and to set it in its flight configuration.
Yeah, because
30
it's
seconds.
an irreversible. Once we've started the synchronized sequence, we can't go back.
No, so we are going.
Absolutely. And we're going to now wait and hear.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence finale lanceur. Top H0-7 minutes.
So there we heard it from the DDO, who is the Range Operations Manager. We'll talk about him in a minute. And he's just announced the start of the synchronized sequence. Just a quick question. Why does it have to happen at -7? We were just saying.
Well, I mean, this is obviously not a magic number. This is just the time for all these last-minute operations to be performed. For example, we are topping up and pressurizing the tanks. We switch the power supply from ground to board, and only then the launcher is going to be fully awakened for launch.
Fantastic. For those who are joining us, we are 6 minutes and 20 seconds to liftoff of Ariane 5, carrying JUICE on the first leg of its journey into space and towards Jupiter. As Raphael was saying, Ariane, we were talking about this earlier, Ariane normally launches 2 passengers, but this time it's a single passenger. So can you just go quickly into what difference that makes for the launcher?
For the launcher, this is a very precious passenger, but for the launcher, it remains exactly the same. You have the 2 lateral boosters, you have the main stage, you have the upper stage, 1 fairing. We are also launching towards the east, which is the same direction as for standard telecommunication satellites. Only the final destination is a bit different. This is Jupiter. It is the last time that we performed such a single configuration. One of the last time was for launching the Space Telescope James Webb. Let's hope today is going to be as flawless and smooth.
Absolutely. And let's quickly now go into the film and have a look at the last couple of months of launch preparations.
So like I said, the electrical power supply switch from ground to board, the cryogenic arms which are feeding the upper stage with fuel, we see them retract 6 seconds before liftoff. The Vulcan engine will ignite first. We need to check it's working properly before we switch on the boosters. That's going to happen 7 seconds later, so don't be surprised if you don't see anything during these 7 seconds, because believe me, you will see and you will hear the launch.
And you'll be hearing every milestone being called out by the DDO. He is the range operations manager, and his role is in an... Oh, we'll wait for the 1 minute mark. Raphael.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute.
距离发射1分钟。
Right. So from here on, no more commentary from us. Don't be surprised if it doesn't take off immediately, because of course there are those 7 seconds, Raphael.
Exactly. So just enjoy the launch.
During which the Vulcan
看来今天
engines
是有
are
机会
set
发
on,
射，
and
因为
then
每天的发
the
射
launcher takes
窗
off.
口实际上是
Go
非常
Ariane
短，
5.
只有1秒钟，必须在那个准确的时间点发射，因为引力牵引的关系，所以必须要把握这个每天1秒钟的这个发射窗口，也就是说整点准时要发射。那我们从现场的布置来看，今天天气状况也允许，应该是有机会能够在今天成功发射。
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top.
点火。成功点火，降温。
Allumage Vulcain. Allumage AP, décollage.
现场画面非常震撼，这是一个发射的远距哦。这项耗资16亿、为期8到10多年之间的一个太空计划就此展开。这亚利安5号是中到重型的一个运载火箭。
La propulsion est nominale.
And there we go. We've seen the Ariane 5 lift off, roaring through the tropical sky, carrying Juice on the first leg of her journey into space. And now she has disappeared under the crowd. And see there, in Kourou, there are many places from which to watch these launches. As you can see, the beach, any place. And here we have a glimpse
现在
again
亚利安5号是成功发射升空啊。
Raphael, it's an
这个
amazing
火箭
sensation
可
for
以
you
说
as
是
well,
研
I'm
发
sure.
多年，经过多次任务，不过
La
马
trajectoire
上
est
就要被
nominale,
这个
tous
亚
les
利安
paramètres
6
de
号
bord sont
火箭
nominaux.
取代。
It's really always impressive, and it's an emotion to see it. So the DDO said that the trajectory is nominal, which means that it's working perfectly, it's going as planned.
La propulsion est nominale, le pilotage est calme.
And in fact, just to sum up what the DDO does in 3 words, his responsibility, as far he's the person who calls out every milestone along the way, and he's in charge of providing information on propulsion, guidance, and trajectory.
Exactly, he's like an orchestra conductor, gathering all the informations and summarizing it in real time, and soon we'll have booster separation.
We're waiting for confirmation from the DDO.
Séparation des EEP.
So the boosters have been safely separated. This is great. They have provided 90% of the overall thrust of the flight, so they're doing the main job. And then soon we'll have the separation of the fairing. And by the way, you see a special drawing on the fairing right here. Children around the world will ask to submit artwork
La trajectoire est nominale.
inspired by Juice's epic journey. And on this fairing, we see one child's interpretation of Jupiter embracing our spacecraft. Everything is nominal.
Tous les paramètres bord sont nominaux.
All parameters are going smoothly.
And there we have it. We've seen it in our
现在整流罩
3D
Séparation confirmée.
and we've just heard it from the DDO.
Confirmed. So the fairing was used to protect the satellites from the friction of the air, but also from the noise generated during the ascent phase. We obviously need to safely separate the fairing, otherwise we would not be able to release juice into space. It also means that we have crossed the limit of the atmosphere. So juice is on its way to be separated in about 24 minutes from now.
还有24分钟左右，这个冰月探测器就会与这个亚利安火箭完全脱离。
stage when it has placed the launcher on an intermediate orbit. After this, I can mention that during, and we can actually see it on the motion design, because this is 3D animations here, that during the ascent phase, the launcher is set in what we call a barbecue mode. So it's slightly rotating on itself at a speed of 0.7 degrees per second.
Le pilotage est calme, la propulsion est nominale.
So we do this so that every face of the satellite is equally exposed to the sunlight. We just want to avoid overheating in one particular side of the spacecraft, which could damage the instruments. And as a matter of fact, when the upper stage is going to be injected on the targeted orbit, it will also rotate at a speed of 0.5 degrees in one direction, and then at the same speed in the other direction. Again, to avoid overheating on one part of the spacecraft, exactly like, a barbecue.
Exactly. And of course, there are the onboard computers. What are they measuring right now, Raphael?
冰月探测器与这个火箭脱离是一个重要的关键点。
Everything is nominal, so they optimize the trajectory in real time. They minimize the propellant consumptions to bring the launcher to the intermediate orbit, targeted at the end of the main stage propulsion phase. And as a matter of fact, we are accelerating a lot right now. So within the next 3 to 4 minutes, we'll go from, 3.5 kilometers per second to more than 7 kilometers per second.
So how much is that per hour? Because you're the engineer.
25,000 kilometers per hour. And ultimately, juice will be separated at a speed of almost 10 kilometers per second. And it will be separated at an altitude of 1,533 kilometers per day. And we had to measure many times the magnetic environment of JUICE during the launch campaign on the ground to make sure that in space it will measure only the magnetic environment of Ganymede and not its own magnetic field.
Because it has a very, very strong magnetic field, of course.
Exactly.
Okay, and so in a nutshell, looking at the time, we actually have, I haven't heard it from the DDO, did you?
So right now, we are in the stage where the upper stage is performing slight orientation maneuvers to separate the spacecraft in a very specific direction. It's important to do so on time in a very precise way, as it will really drive the satellite injection accuracy and have an impact on the rest of the spacecraft's lifetime in space. Just to give you an idea, in end of May, JUICE will perform what we call a trajectory correction maneuver. And so the better the injection precision, the less important the maneuver is going to be, meaning that JUICE will be able to save its precious fuel for the rest of the mission.
And Raphael, we are 30 seconds away from separation. What are we going to see exactly? And then we'll stop the commentary and wait for the moment. In a nutshell?
Well, let me remind you that this is 3D animation here, but the teams are receiving signals and information in real time, and it is them who will confirm the separation of JUICE on its liberation orbit. They will provide all necessary information to ESA teams so that they can inquire.
好的，你可以看到现在冰月探测器是跟亚利安的上层段是成功的分离。接下来的一个步骤就是它在这个发射后99分钟 到17天之间要进行这个太阳能板的布放。现在你可以看到、听到，现场响起热烈的掌声。
Relief from the teammates.
This is years and years of work
接下来这个
on the part of these teams.
JUICE 冰月探测器要进行长达8年的孤独
And
旅
it
程。
is so good to see such joy on their faces.
No,
Of
look at
course,
this.
a reminder that this is the very, very first leg of JUICE's journey.
You can see the emotions on the faces. That's really what makes space activities so special. It's like a reboost each time we launch a satellite. And what a satellite right now.
Honestly, I can only wish good luck to JUICE and all the teams for this incredible journey through the outer solar system. That's absolutely amazing what we are living right now.
The atmosphere here in Jupiter is effervescent. There is a true sense of joy and happiness. But as I was saying, of course, this is the very beginning of the journey, and we will be letting, of course, the teams in Darmstadt take over shortly, because they are the ones who are going to be confirming acquisition of signals, first signs of life from our passenger. You were going to say, Raphael?
Now, I was saying to say, this is the beginning of the journey for JUICE. For the launcher, we may perform what we call a passivation of the upper stage, meaning that the remaining propellant of the tanks is expelled in order to prevent any risk of explosion in space. This is a requirement for a sustainable use of space. And we also perform a very small disposal
现场可以
maneuver
看到是
in
相
order
当
to
热烈
remove
庆
the
祝的
upper
画
stage
面，
from
稍
any
待
operational
下一
orbit,
个重要关键点
giving
就
an
是
extra
地
push
面
of
站，
13
太空总
meters
署
per
的地
second.
面站能够
And so
与
yes,
这个
and then this is going to
能够
be
连接上
the real
差不
end
多
of
在
the mission
还有4、5
for
分钟
the
左
launcher.
右。
But right
For
now,
Arianespace.
let's focus on the joy on people's face. This is absolutely incredible. JUICE is on its way to Jupiter.
And it is especially a joy when you know, considering the stress that a delay brings. Even though we know that the passenger is safe, it is a lot of work for many people to have to delay, and a very safe choice to make, of course, as we can see today.
So again, in a few minutes, ESA teams will acquire the satellites.
We're now
So-
waiting for, of course, for comments from Stéphane Israël, who's just been mic'd up in the fishbowl, and he'll be with us very shortly. So we'll of course tell you when he's with us. We'll let you know, and we'll let you enjoy the smiles and happiness on everyone's face. And here we have Stéphane, who is mic'd up and ready. Stéphane Israël, over to you. A few seconds delay, but he's with us. Over to you, Stéphane.
So today's mission is a full success. Team Europe has perfectly delivered. I really want to pay our tribute to all the teams who have made this success possible. Arianespace and Ariane Group team for sure, all the supply chain, ESA, our customer, and Airbus Defence and Space, who is the JUICE manufacturer. It's really the success of Team Europe today, with the support as well for sure of CNES here on the spaceport, and with the design authority of Ariane 5. It is absolutely perfect launch today, and it is now the start of a journey for JUICE, 8 years journey.
Thank you very much, Stéphane Israël, Arianespace CEO. So our teams are now going to, at ESOC, are now going to be taking over from here. So we're going to hand over
刚才
to
你
them
听
in
到
the
的是
mission
现
control,
场
ESA
这个
mission
雅利安
control
火箭
in
发射
Darmstadt.
场的
Over
现
to
场
you,
的
Matt.
负责人，他发表意见，他是强调这一次
Thank you very much,
发射已
Lisa.
经成功。
So welcome
接下
back to
来
everyone.
会由这
We
个
are
欧洲
standing
太空总署的
in
太空
the
中心来
heart of
接
the
手
European
连接啊
Space，
我们来听
Operations
现
Centre
场的一些
ESOC.
画面。
A facility in Darmstadt, and this is the mission control room right behind me, the main one. We've got a couple of major milestone events coming up. In less than 5 minutes, we hope to get the first acquisition of signal. That's where we actually talk to the spacecraft itself, and that gets picked up by.
现在欧洲太空总署是准备接收来自 JUICE 的上面的讯号。
And in about an hour, we should then have the final and next key milestone, which is the deployment of JUICE's enormous solar panels. So I'm going to be talking to loads of
接下来接手以后，再隔差不多1个钟头左右，他们会开始布置这个 JUICE 上面巨大的这个太阳能电池板。
answered. I'm super lucky, and we're all really super excited as well. This has been an amazing day after yesterday's disappointment. For the next half hour, I've got Deputy Flight Director Bruno Souza, who's standing there in the heart of the operation. So, Bruno, how is it looking there in the nerve center right now?
Well, what a beautiful flight. What a beautiful flight from Ariane 5. Everybody's quite excited, but now starts the hard part. The next major critical milestone we have is called acquisition of signal. We will expect to hear from the spacecraft from our ground station at New Norcia in Australia. If you see behind me, there is a plot over there on the screen. If this was a hospital and the satellite was our patient, that would be the electrocardiogram. And what we want to see there is a nice, beautiful shape, should resemble the Himalayas with a Everest in the middle. That indicates the satellite is alive and healthy. If we only see the Kilimanjaro, we'll have some work to do. If we don't see anything at all, we'll just have to be patient and wait for it.
现场的介绍强调，接下来关键至关重要，因为地面站必须要接受到 JUICE 的讯号，要不然他们是无法了解 JUICE 的。 可以说是身体的健康状况，他可能是用这个监护人员跟这个病人的比喻来做比喻，这是一个非常特别的一个方式。那欧洲太空总署的控制室是非常兴奋，准备要接收来自这个 JUICE 的讯号。
As you can see, I've got a new guest here, the first of our guests, Angela Dietz. So I've been watching you working in the control room. So you've come off a night shift, is that right?
Not yet. We started at 6 o'clock in the morning.
That's
okay.
A night shift. That's a night shift
exactly.
as far as I'm concerned.
The second time we did it, and everything worked well. And yes, we launched. It's amazing. And in about a minute, we actually might see the acquisition of signal already. So it might be already coming up now. It's not guaranteed. There could be also delays if the spacecraft has a certain spin from the separation from the launcher.
In fact, we've got this little picture here. What sort of thing are we expecting to see?
Yeah, so like Kourou was explaining, a bit like a mountain in the middle. Yeah, so this is the frequency band the ground station is listening to. So it's pointed at JUICE, where JUICE is supposed to be, and the communication system on the spacecraft was already started, so it's already transmitting data. But here we wait for the spacecraft actually to come over the horizon, so to arrive to be seen from the ground station.
So we've got have we got a small window where we can see this, or how big's the window where we can actually see this acquisition signal?
Well, this time would be actually now, but it could be delayed up to 40 minutes. So really depends how the spacecraft is moving. If it's a little bit tumbling, the spacecraft will first do an acquisition, and stabilize the attitude.
Okay, right. We're just coming up to this acquisition window, so I'm going to go over to Bruno in the control room and see if we can see what's happening.
We just have to be patient. The signal is not there yet. At any moment now, it will appear. Actually, I will not bother you describing it too much. Just stay with me and watch that signal until it pops up with the signal of our spacecraft.
ODOM.
OMOD.
Quick brief from New Norcia. They see the downlink signal from Ariane.
Copy.
So it's about seconds or minutes that we will see JUICE.
目前还在等待来自 JUICE 上面的讯号。您可以看到这个荧幕下方有几个这个标志，并不是很清楚啊。接下来是接收讯号，目前正在接收当中，然后在接下来1个小时以后，会展开布置太阳能板的工作。
No signal yet.
还没接收到讯号，现场有一点紧张的气氛啊。
La dernière manœuvre d'orientation de l'étage supérieur se poursuit de manière nominale.
Give me a go. We still don't have acquisition of signal at this point. This satellite, as you might have heard already, has been separated from the launcher, from Ariane 5. As it separates, there's always a certain rotation, a tumbling effect. The satellite needs to first prime the thrusters. That means it needs to make all the pipes open such that the fuel and the oxidizer can flow through it. At this point, it can use the thrusters for control, and then it will try to find its own orientation in space, and at that point, it will
switch on the transmitter and start transmitting. So there's always a certain uncertainty about the time when we'll actually receive the signal. We have to be patient, we have to keep looking, and I'm sure it will wake up quite soon.
So thanks very much, Bruno. So Angela, what does it mean? What does this actually mean? How long do we have to kind of try and get this signal acquired? And you know, where are we? What's your feelings right now?
For me, this is still nominal. Yeah, yep. Still quite nominal. So this is really what we said, like 51, that the spacecraft comes over the horizon of the antenna, so could be seen from the antenna, but that doesn't mean that the spacecraft is already in a state to really transmit. It's what Bruno was said, so it's really still finding, stabilizing the attitude. So yeah, only in about half an hour we would start to get nervous. So from this point on, it's still nominal for our point of view.
And if it is tumbling, and the spacecraft itself does its own kind of trying to work itself out, and that obviously there's millions of different scenarios, I'm assuming, of how it does that. So is that why there might be this delay in terms of how it how it works itself out?
Yeah, there's some studies, some investigations that we've done how much the tumbling could be, and yeah, it could be worst case. Yeah, just taking this time.
Okay, well, thanks very much. So thanks very much for joining us. It's really tense now. It's super tense. So if you've just joined us and you are following the JUICE spacecraft after its separation from Ariane 5, we're hoping to actually talk to the spacecraft soon. It's starting its billion-kilometre journey to Jupiter, many billion-kilometre journey to Jupiter. We're in the European Space Operations Centre, where the fleet of the European satellites and spacecraft are actually flown and controlled by a large multinational team, people at Angela, scientists and engineers. If you want to ask questions of my many guests that are coming up, you can use the hashtag #AskESA. And I'll try and get them answered as soon as I can. But in the meantime, I'm going to switch you back over to Bruno.
To me.
Oh, for the who's who in the main control. Yeah, tell us who's who in this, who all this international team are.
Just as well, it's a good opportunity to introduce everybody who's in the control room right now. And I will start with this side of the room.
And
this function are the software coordinators. Today, Marta and Luca and Danielle are taking care of all our software. So all the software that is running on these consoles and on the servers, it's taken care by them. If anything fails, they bring it back up. Right next to them are the ground operations managers, and they are taking care of all the facilities, all the ground stations, making sure that we are connected to the ground station, configuring the ground station to listen in on the satellite, so they will be responsible for finding the satellite in the sky shortly. Now we move over here to the flight control team. And in the flight control team, they're responsible for operating the satellite, so they will take over control once we see it in the sky. Different functions are present here. On the front row, platform is responsible for our radio communication system and for our thermal system. Rudy is on shift at the moment. Right next to him, Arthur is taking care of the data handling. That's our onboard computer, our mass memory, and all the routing of data to the ground is taken care by Arthur. And then over here on this side, we have the attitude and orbit control expert. In this case, Giulio today. He's taking care of monitoring the separation sequence and what's happening on board. He's also our system engineer. And leading all these people at the moment is my dear friend and colleague for many years, Ignacio Tanco, who I may add is probably one of the best spacecraft operations managers in the world right now. At least the only one flying to Jupiter today. And over here on the last row, we have the flight director. He's also on this side of the ocean, orchestrating, like a maestro, all the teams that are now working towards a successful mission for JUICE. And next to him, we have project support, the project representative. They have been working on the development of JUICE for many years, and they have been managing the program, and now they are finally seeing the fruit of their long years of work. And they are also our interface to the Airbus team that built the satellite, and they're sitting in the room behind this wall, providing us all the support that we need. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks very much, Bruno. Right, always absolutely amazing to have Bruno's expertise on the floor and just all those amazing people. What an absolutely awesome team they are. So if you've just joined us, we're live in Germany, here in the heart of the control centre, where the European fleet of satellites and spacecraft are indeed flown, as we've just seen. You can join in at home and send in your questions at #AskESA. So right now, we're trying to talk to the spacecraft, and that is done with a ground station called New Norcia, which is actually in Australia. And amazingly, we're going to be able to speak to the manager of New Norcia, Susie Jackson, all the way the other side of the world. We've got to go right the way through the world to get there. Yeah, let's go there right now. Hello, Susie. So right behind you, I can see an enormous dish that looks very much like our acquisition of signal icon.
G'day.
Is that the one that we're actually going to be using to try and talk to the JUICE spacecraft?
Yes, so this is Eunorcia 1. This is our 35-metre main antenna here at Eunorcia, and we're currently having a go at acquiring juice as we speak. As you can see, we're up a little ways away from the horizon already, so the spacecraft is up in the sky here. Conditions here are really good, really nominal, and we're waiting for the signal to come in from the spacecraft.
So that does look like an enormous dish. Does that track it straight away, or is there another dish that sort of can move faster and get a hold of the spacecraft before this massive, enormous dish does?
Yeah, so for these early acquisitions of spacecraft that are still close to the Earth, we cheat a little bit because we've got such a big dish here with Eunorcia 1. It has a very, very, very narrow beam, so it's only able to spot a spacecraft in a very small, very well-defined area. Because we aren't completely sure where JUICE is yet, there might be a little bit of variation in its trajectory, although I hear everything's nominal so far. We use a smaller antenna, which is up behind me on the hill, called Eunorcia 2, and that's a 4.5-metre antenna, and it has a beam width that's close to 10 times as big, so it's about half a degree. So if JUICE is up there and it's transmitting to us, we'll see it. So as soon as JUICE gets its act together and gets its attitude stabilised and starts talking to us, we'll definitely hear that signal.
Yeah, JUICE is keeping us all guessing at the moment. So how long can this dish actually track JUICE for? Is it for the whole day, or how does that work?
Yeah, so our nominal mission tonight will be about 7 hours from AOS right the way through to what we call LOS, loss of signal. So we'll track up into the sky up to about 50 degrees, and then while we're doing that, JUICE is moving away from the planet, and the planet's rotating underneath JUICE. So it'll actually come up, and rather than going over the other side like a normal satellite that's in Earth's orbit would do, it'll actually go up and then come back down as the spacecraft moves away and as the Earth rotates underneath. So we'll see, if you're still watching in 7 hours, which I'm sure you won't, we'll see the antenna set again, pretty much back where we came from.
Yes, Susie, I've got some great news for you. We have acquisition of signal, so I'm going to go over to Bruno in the main control room. This is super ace news.
Wow, wow. What can I say? These are the words that every spacecraft operations engineer wants to hear. And Andrea Comazzo just said them to us. He said, we have acquisition of signal. The spacecraft is transmitting telemetry. It's flowing into our systems. Everybody's super excited, super happy. Well, it's a lot of work from now onwards, and we have to keep on going. So we'll keep reporting back how we're doing. First of all, we've reached a fantastic milestone. The spacecraft is alive. You start seeing Mount Everest popping up there in the plot right now. The telemetry is flowing and nominal. We will now start checking every subsystem to make sure that everything is healthy after this crazy ride into space. And then we'll report back to tell you how we're doing. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks so much, Bruno. I mean, I think it's actually made it more exciting, yes. Now, don't forget, you can get involved at home and ask questions. And we are on a roller coaster, so we've just hit our first of our milestones. We've got one more really big one coming up. So if you fancy joining in, asking questions, then please do send in your facts. So I'm going to be joined in a second after I show you a video about how exciting this whole journey has been for mankind, getting here to send a spacecraft off to Jupiter. And so we're going to play you a little video now, and I'm going to take you back in time. We're going to go back, far back in time. So I've got my newest guest. I'm joined by Anna-Zina Solomonidou, the senior scientist at the Hellenic Space Center, who's been working on JUICE. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we just saw a video that went back to the moment where Galileo saw Jupiter with his own eyeballs. I mean, this is incredible. So tell us why Jupiter is just so fascinating.
Well, Jupiter has countless fascinating facts. There's so many things to tell about Jupiter, right? First of all, it's the largest planet of our solar system. It's really massive. It's similar to a star, but it never got big enough in order to start burning. So compared to Earth, it's more than 300 times more massive than Earth is. Pretty big. And in fact, it's actually 2.5 times more massive than any other planet of our solar system combined. So that's about size, right? Then it has very big storms, like the red giant spot that we have on Jupiter, that it's been there for hundreds of years, and it's covered also with clouds that they're like 50 kilometers thick. So you can imagine about the size, right, and what we're talking about. It also has rings. We don't know that much, about Jupiter's rings compared to what we know about Saturn, for instance, but they're there. It's just they're a little bit fainter, yeah. It has been observed by 8 different spacecrafts throughout the time, and of course it has the most moons than any other planet of our solar system. So we count 95 moons up to today, and some of them, the Galilean moons, are so interesting and so important that we're sending a mission to go there and look at them, a dedicated one.
We've had this picture up on the screen. Is this the sort of thing that Galileo might have seen through his telescope?
Well, I can imagine that he didn't see that precisely. It was something fainter and more blurry. But he saw something, so that was very important.
Yeah. So when he first looked at Jupiter, did he actually see the moons when he first saw it, or did he have to sort of adapt his optics and get better and better at actually being a telescope maker?
Exactly, yeah. So while Jupiter was known since the ancient times, Galileo was the first one in 1610 that made a detailed observation of the planet. And because he made some improvements to his small telescope, he was able to observe more distinctly some bodies, and that's how he was able to observe the Galilean satellites. So we're talking about Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. So yeah, and in a sense, Jupiter is going to try to do the same if we think about it.
Yeah.
So Galileo improved his small telescope, his main instrument, and he was able to see something that wasn't seen before. So now with JUICE, we're going back with state-of-the-art, new and unique instruments to improve what we've seen before with previous missions. So in a sense, JUICE is going to significantly enhance our knowledge and push further the capabilities of previous missions and previous observations.
So yeah, these Galilean moons, as you said, is so synonymous with Jupiter. The actual mission itself has actually got a tribute to the man himself, Galileo. So do you know? Can you tell us just a little bit about that tribute?
Yeah, there's a plaque that is mounted on the spacecraft, and it actually replicates a few pages from.
I think we have a little bit of a screen here of it.
Yeah, exactly. So you see this being mounted on the spacecraft, and it replicates a few images from Galileo's book, where he described the observations of the moons back in 1610. So I think it's very emotional, and it's a very nice touch to bring something from Earth to this, outer solar system body.
Yeah.
And say, okay, we've been following you for so many years.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm just going to remind listeners that they can ask questions of my guest. You just have to find social media and just use the hashtag #AskESA. We're actually in Darmstadt in Germany, which is where they fly and look after all these amazing spacecraft that the European Space Agency build. And I'm here with scientists, engineers and spacecraft specialists. It's a real special moment to talk to these people on what is one of Europe's biggest missions ever, this journey to JUICE. I'm gonna hand over to Bruno because he has some news for us. Let's go.
More good news. The spacecraft is in a hurry. We acquired a signal and we just realized that the spacecraft is going quite fast through the configuration into the automatic sequence that is leading us towards the solar array deployment. So in fact, the last pyrotechnics that will release the solar rays will fire in about 15 minutes. And at that point, we might start seeing the solar rays then deploying and reaching their final position. So all in all, we should count on about 20 minutes until we have the solar rays fully deployed.
Thanks so much, Bruno. That is like amazing news. We've gone from being scared to being joyous here. So someone's actually sent in a question from Twitter, and it says here, a question from my daughter. Why are you going there?
That's the key question, I think. We are going there because we want to go, you know, we're going to be close and personal with the habitable worlds of our solar system. And we have amazing examples there. We're talking about Ganymede, Europa, and Callisto. So we go in there, because we have some fundamental questions to answer, and these are coming from the previous missions. And some of them is very simple. How do these moons look like in detail? We're going to spend some time there, so we will have the opportunity to look closely and overlap, you know, go back to the previous, to places that we visited before and see how do they change with time. We want to see also, we want to examine, explore a typical gas giant like Jupiter. You know, this is an amazing opportunity. And we want to see how this complex environment formed and shaped all these moons. So we have pretty good reasons to go back. And specifically, if we think about the moons, we're going to look very closely at Ganymede, and Ganymede is the largest satellite of our solar system. It has its own magnetic field that doesn't happen with other satellites, right?
Super interesting, yeah.
And it's a very good example of a liquid environment. Let's not forget that the most interesting fact about these moons is that they're ocean worlds. And what does that mean? Is that they hide a liquid ocean underneath their icy surface. So Ganymede is a very good example of a liquid environment trapped in between icy layers. Then we go into Europa, and Europa is 4.5 billion years old, but the surface is only 20 to 180 million years old. So it's very, very young. And it also, we suspect that the water there is in Europa is double the water we have here on Earth. So it's the best candidate. If you want to find life out of Earth, Europa is a very good candidate to go and, you know, search and look around.
I mean, that's why we're going, isn't it? The water things. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean,
thank you,
the whole purpose of going to Jupiter is just blowing my mind. But thank you so much. So we've just got to the hour mark after launch. So I think it's about time we went back to Bruno and got more of an update. What's happening in the control room, Bruno?
Hi, Matt. It's all going according to plan. The pyros are firing in sequence. Every time one fires, we wait another 2 minutes, the next one fires. We will get an information as soon as we reach the last ones, and then we will know that we are just a few minutes away from full array deployment. So we just have to hang on a few minutes more. Everything is going super smooth. All subsystems have reported already that the spacecraft looks quite healthy. So
no reason to worry at this point. Let's just keep watching. A few minutes more, and we should have also power being produced by the spacecraft itself.
Thanks so much, Bruno. So sending a spacecraft to Jupiter really is no mean feat, with some very hard obstacles to overcome. I'm delighted that I'm joined by Frederick Fay from Airbus, who are the main contractor that actually built the actual spacecraft itself. So welcome, Frederick. So what are the challenges for the spacecraft it's a super harsh environment, isn't it, space? And so what are the challenges that it faces on this 12-year timeline? In fact, we're looking at this timeline here. Can you describe a little bit about the journey, about how the actual journey works? And
yes, so in fact, the mission was defined to maximize the mass of science instruments to be brought to Jupiter. And to do that, Ariane 5 was not powerful enough to send directly the spacecraft toward Jupiter. The payload mass would have been too small. and what has been designed by ESOC mission analysis team and then tuned by flight dynamics team.
现场也在介绍未来这个时间发展啊。事实上，这个 JUICE 它的旅程是非常长，要花这个8年左右的时间才能到这个木星附近的系统啊。这个探测器预计在2024年的8月会飞过地球的最主要的伴飞卫星，也就是月亮。在2025年的8月会飞过金星，预计在2031年是进入木星的星系统。我们提到这个 JUICE 探测计划是由欧洲航天局主导，有来自23个国家、18个学术单位、83间的公司。高达2000多人共同参与，总预算是高达16亿的欧元。目前还在等待这个布放太阳能板啊，也是等到布放太阳能板以后 ，JUICE 太空船才能够自己这个产生电力供应啊，才能够自己有这个动力。
And then you are 1 day after around the Earth, and you have a double acceleration that improves the overall energetical scenario. Then at Jupiter, we'll have a full tour with 3 moon.
可以看到，它因为是一个大轨道飞行，借助这个地球、火星跟这个不同星球的引力牵引啊。才能够节省燃料，顺利抵达木星哦。所以它飞越地球大概会有这个1次、2次，至少是2次。另外经过不同的星系以及穿越小行星带，都需要这个时间。
And the other interesting thing is we're going in completely the wrong direction. I don't know if you know this, but Venus seems to be right towards the sun.
Yeah, Venus is closer to the sun than Jupiter, but Venus is has a mass similar to the Earth, so it's very effective in terms of planetary gravity assist. It's more effective than Mars, that is in between Earth and Jupiter, but combining all those planets at the end allows a good trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that even in 6 years' time, she's still going to be flying around the Earth. Yeah. And that's it. It's incredible, isn't it? So on this journey, we've got really extreme temperatures, haven't we? We've got, like, I'm assuming by Venus it gets incredibly hot, and out by Jupiter there's virtually no sunlight.
This is one of the difficulties of the mission. To benefit from this Venus flyby, it means also that we have to face solar flux will be very high. About two times the flux received on Earth, so about 3 kilowatts per square meter. We go even closer to the sun than Venus. So, and at Jupiter, we are at a very low sun illumination. So the range of sun illumination is from 1 to 60, meaning that the spacecraft has to cope with very hot and very cold temperature case. In the very hot case, some area of the spacecraft will be at plus 250 degrees C, which is, so we need some specific material. And when we are at Jupiter, in particular at the end of Jupiter eclipse, which can last up to 5 hours, then the temperature of the coldest part of the spacecraft, which is the solar array, drop down to minus 230 degrees C. So you have to design a spacecraft that cope with more or less 500 degrees of excursion in temperature.
Yeah, so what solutions you've actually developed to do that?
It's multiple solutions. For the body of the spacecraft, it's first isolating the spacecraft from the sun, so it's by multi-layer covers, thermal covers. We have up to 25 layers, which protect the spacecraft. When we are close to the sun, going to Venus, we also point the high-gain antenna towards the sun, which is used as the first heat shield. And we communicate with the Earth with another antenna that will be deployed in a couple of hours, the medium gain antenna that is 60 centimeter diameter. For the solar array, to avoid that the solar array are too hot, we tilt them to minimize the surface presented to the sun. And this tilt is maintained when we are in between the Earth and the sun. And then at Jupiter, we have to benefit from the multi-layer insulation that enable to maintain the electronic inside the spacecraft within, let's say, a comfortable environment with a minimum of heater power that is also provided by electrical heaters.
Yeah, I've got some questions coming in from social media that I'll ask you in a second. I've just got one question that I've been... The radiation that we're getting at...
radiation at Jupiter.
Yeah, radiation at Jupiter. What are the different sources of radiation and how are they affecting the spacecraft?
Yes, radiation of Jupiter. Jupiter is a big system, in fact, and Jupiter is very massive, and it creates some tidal effect on the closest moon orbiting around Jupiter, which is Io, and Io is not an icy moon, it's a volcanic moon. This volcanism is created by Jupiter gravity, and as a result of that, you have a large ejection of Io material, basically sulfur dioxide, that is then catched by the magnetic field of Jupiter. Magnetic field of Jupiter is huge, so ejection are done at several hundred of kilometers above the surface of Io, captured by the magnetic field, which is rotating fastest than the moon itself in its orbit, and then it is ionized and transformed into ions and electrons and protons. But the electrons are further accelerated and becomes very high energy electron, much more than what we can face on the Earth, and these are really killer for spacecraft electronics.
So I really want to get this. Someone's asked a question out on the hashtag #AskESA channel, and they're debating in the office, will this be the heaviest interplanetary spacecraft ever launched?
No, because you have spacecraft going even faster. Voyager, I think it goes faster.
No, heaviest.
Yes, fastest. Heaviest, 6 tons for interplanetary, yes, it is heaviest. And the 6 tons are made of 2.2 tons of dry mass and more than 3.6 tons of propellant mass, and let's say 220 kilo of instrument. So for 220 kilo of real science instrument, you need a 6 ton for this mission at launch.
It's a long journey, isn't it? How much fuel do you need?
In fact, the fuel is not really for the journey, it's for very specific maneuver. We need to insert the spacecraft around Jupiter, so it costs about 1/3 of the fuel. Then later on, we need to orbit around Ganymede, so we need also to be captured around Ganymede, so it's another significant portion of the fuel. And we have some small maneuver here and there on the orbit. But most of the propellant is for insertion maneuver.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for telling us all about it's an amazing spacecraft. Apparently, we're going to go over to Susie over in New Norcia.
现在现场还在等待铺放太阳能板的确认哦。
Is that not right?
G'day, Matt.
Hello, Susie. We've got you back.
Hello.
Hello. So Susie...
Hello, Matt. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, Susie, how do we communicate with a spacecraft that's that far away?
Well, the trick is you use a really big antenna like we have here. Here's one I prepared earlier. So the whole idea is the spacecraft can only carry a small antenna, so it can only have a fairly small amount of gain and a fairly small amount of power, because it all has to be driven by the solar panels. Whereas here on Earth, we can have as big an antenna as we like, and we can use as much power as we like. So when we're receiving from the antenna, we use very, very sophisticated cryogenic receivers and a large antenna. And when we're transmitting to the spacecraft, we just use brute force. So we just put up to 20 kilowatts of radio power straight out through the antenna towards the spacecraft, and it all works.
So can you give us some idea about the different sort of levels of power that you're trying to receive? And because I'm assuming these are ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, so an analogy is if you're standing on the surface of Mars and you have a mobile phone, now of course assuming that your mobile phone is in the frequency bands that we use for space communications, which your mobile phone isn't, but if you had a mobile phone on the surface of Mars, we'd be able to pick up that signal. We have some of the most sensitive receivers on the face of the planet.
So how long does it take a command to actually reach the spacecraft? Because you're not just receiving signals, are you? You're actually able to talk to the spacecraft as well and then hear back from the spacecraft. How long does that whole process take, and what are the challenges there?
Yeah, so one of the big problems here is that the spacecraft is so far away. So it can take, Jupiter in fact is anywhere from around 40 to 50 minutes away at the speed of light. So of course the commands travel out to Jupiter at the speed of light. So they'll get there in 40 or 50 minutes. A response from the spacecraft can take another 40 or 50 minutes to come back. So you're looking at a round trip time of an hour and a half. So it's one of the comments that I've heard about deep space tracking actually from one of my colleagues at ESA is that it's sometimes like watching grass grow because it's slow and
现场解
methodical
说，由于这个
and
距
you
离的
take your
关系，
time
未
talking
来
to the
打
spacecraft.
到木星以后，
Yeah, can you
双方
describe
这
the
个通
process of
讯的
sending
时间
commands? Is
一
it
来一往
different to
可能要
receiving
长达
commands?
一
What's
个
the,
半小
what's the,
时
is there
才
any
能得到
similarities and
回应。
differences? What are the main differences there?
Well, so the main difference, of course, is when we're receiving very small signals. When we transmit back to the spacecraft, we use the same hardware, we use all the same antenna, and we use the same feed horn, we use the same, much the same electronics. But of course, instead of having a very sensitive receiver, we have an extremely large, powerful transmitter. And if you look at the base of the antenna that you might be able to see behind me, we've got a big array of chiller equipment, which is actually used just to cool down the transmitters in the base of the antenna, because we use hundreds of kilowatts of power to actually generate the signal that the spacecraft needs.
So Susie, I've got some more exciting news from Bruno. We're going straight to Bruno in the main control room. So Bruno, give us your update now, please.
So we've just reached the second most critical milestone in this LEOP, which is the deployment of the solar rays. Just a couple of minutes ago, the last pyros that are cutting the knives of the cables that hold the solar rays have been fired successfully. And you can see on the screen up there a representation of the spacecraft, and the panel on the left side has just started to deploy. On the left side to that scheme, you see the power consumption and the power production of the spacecraft. The red line indicates that we were consuming power from the batteries. That means we were negative. It was below the scale. And now the blue line shows that the satellite has started to produce its own electricity. So the solar panels on that side have started to deploy. A number of the panels, the sub-panels, are already in their position. They are deployed. They are not yet locked, but they're reaching there. I just got information that one of the wings now looks deployed at microswitch level. That means it's in its final position. And you see that successively the power starts increasing as each of the panels unfolds. I recall that these are some of the largest solar panels ever flown an interplanetary mission. They have 27 meters from one edge to the other edge. In total, they have an area of 85 square meters of solar panels. Close to the Earth, they're able to produce a lot of power. But once we get to Jupiter, it will only produce a few hundred watts. Nevertheless, the process is ongoing. This is a very exciting moment for us. If it all works out, if the two panels successfully completely deploy, we will have a mission ready to fly to Jupiter. We will still need to do a lot of work to configure the satellite for cruise and to configure the satellite for the commissioning phase that comes afterwards. That is the phase where we test all the equipment to make sure that everything is still fully functioning. But I keep hearing my colleagues saying that switches keep registering the panels unfolding. So everything is going quite nominally at this point. It will take a few more minutes. I think we're almost ready. The wing on the right side also started to deploy nominally, and some of the switches are already indicating that they are in the deployed position. As the power increases steadily, it will not increase non-stop. At one point, it will reach the limit of power that the spacecraft is able to consume, and it will not produce more than that. It automatically regulates itself only to produce as much as the satellite needs. Although at this distance from the sun, it is able to produce a lot more. The batteries are already being recharged, so there is already an excess of power coming from the solar rays that allows us to refill the batteries. I recall you that the satellite has been working on batteries ever since a few minutes before the actual launch of Ariane 5. We went to internal power, and the spacecraft has been using its internal batteries to keep everything up and running. Now it's moving on to the solar rays, it's producing its own energy, and it's able to refill the batteries. Confirmation minus Y, that's the side, the right side of the spacecraft, minus Y.
With you.
Yeah, absolutely. The early tense has made this all the more